My name is Olivia Taylor, and what I'm about to tell you will completely change the way you see the world. For over 20 years, I've been a professional astrologer, helping people navigate life through the wisdom of the stars and planetary alignments. I thought I understood the universe, until everything changed on March 14th, 2024. That was the day I died, clinically dead for 7 minutes. And what I experienced on the other side transformed me forever. I saw Jesus Christ himself. He revealed to me the true meaning of the mysterious M mark on human hands. The message he gave me was urgent, and now I feel a deep responsibility to share it with you. It was a rainy morning, March 14th, 2024. I remember it so clearly because it started out like any ordinary day. I had 2 astrology readings scheduled for the afternoon and was in the middle of working on a detailed birth chart for a high-profile client. My career was steady, thriving even. That morning I was running late. My assistant, Sarah, called to remind me about an upcoming interview with a local radio station. "Olivia, don't forget, they want to hear your predictions for the next lunar cycle." I laughed. "Relax, Sarah. I've got it under control. This isn't my first rodeo." I grabbed my coffee and headed out, my mind already racing with thoughts about planetary alignments and what I'd say in the interview. The rain was coming down hard, making the streets slick and reflective. As I approached the crosswalk at 7th Avenue in Maine, the traffic light turned red, and then everything went black. I wasn't really paying attention. My phone buzzed, and without thinking, I glanced down. That's when I heard it. The screech of tires, blinding headlights, a deafening crash. My body was weightless for a split second before slamming into the pavement. A sharp, icy sensation spread through me. Distant screams echoed around me, my vision blurred. Then, nothing. Everything faded to black. For a brief moment, one thought crossed my mind. This is it. This is how it ends. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. Silence. Not just quiet, complete silence. The rain, the shouting, the chaos. All of it was gone. I felt light, free. There was no pain. It was as if I had left my body behind, yet somehow I was still me. I opened my eyes, or at least I thought I did, and saw myself lying there on the pavement. Paramedics swarmed around my body. "She's not breathing! Start compressions!" one of them shouted. Another fumbled with a defibrillator. A few feet away, Sarah stood frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. And yet, I felt nothing. No fear, no panic, only an overwhelming sense of calm. What is happening?" I whispered, though I had no voice. I was fully aware, fully conscious, but my body was no longer mine. That's when it hit me. I was dead. And then, above me, a golden light appeared. It wasn't just bright. It was alive. The light pulsed with an energy that felt like pure love, radiating warmth that wrapped around me. I wasn't walking toward it. I was being drawn in, pulled by an unseen force. The glow intensified, and as I moved closer, I saw figures within it, shapes bathed in the same golden light. They were singing. The music was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It wasn't just sound, it was emotion. Each note resonated deep within me, filling me with an overwhelming sense of peace and understanding. Then, a voice called my name. "Olivia." It wasn't loud or forceful, yet it carried incredible power. It vibrated through me, touching every part of my being. "Come." I didn't hesitate. I followed. I floated above everything, detached from the scene below. My body lay motionless as paramedics worked frantically. "Clear!" one of them shouted. My body convulsed from the shock. Nothing. I was still gone. Yet, I could see everything with stunning clarity. The rain bouncing off the pavement, the fine scratches on the paramedic's wristwatch, even the panic in Sarah's breath. And then I noticed something strange. My hands. Even though I wasn't in my body, I could see them, slightly translucent, glowing faintly. And on my left palm, something stood out. An M. It had always been there, just a faint set of lines. But now, it was distinct. It pulsed softly, as if it were alive. I lifted my hand, staring at it in wonder. "What is this?" I murmured, knowing no one could hear me. A voice spoke behind me. "Do you see it now?" I turned, and there he was. Jesus stood before me, tall and radiant, glowing with a light brighter than the sun itself. His eyes were filled with warmth and understanding, yet behind them was the weight of eternity. "Lord," I whispered. "Yes," he answered gently. "This is real." He stepped closer and touched my hand. A wave of warmth flooded through me, and the M mark on my skin began to glow under his touch. "You have carried this mark all your life," Jesus said. "It is a sign of your purpose, a mark of spiritual identity. But soon, the enemy will try to corrupt it." The light around him grew even brighter, pulling me toward it. Music swelled in the air, blending with the pulsing glow. But then, Jesus raised his hand, and the pull stopped. "There is something you must understand," he said. "This mark is not just yours. Many of my children bear it, though most never realize its meaning." I lifted my hand, studying the symbol. "Why is it shaped like an M?" Jesus smiled gently. "It stands for many things: Messiah, mission, miracle. But soon, its meaning will be twisted. The enemy will use this mark to deceive and mislead." A chill ran down my spine. "How?" His expression darkened slightly. "It will begin as progress," he said. "Technology that promises to solve the world's greatest problems, but it will come at a cost." I opened my mouth to speak, but he continued. "Soon, people will willingly accept a mark, one that resembles the one on your hand. They will take it in the name of security, convenience, and innovation. But it will not be from me. It will be a counterfeit." My heart pounded, even though I no longer had a heart. "What happens if they take it?" I asked, dread creeping into my voice. Jesus' eyes softened, but the weight of his words remained heavy. "It will separate them from me," he said. "This mark will change them, not just physically, but spiritually. Their hearts will harden, and they will no longer hear my voice." Tears welled in my eyes. "But why?" Jesus looked at me with deep sorrow. "The mark will be a choice," he said. "A final decision, whether to put your trust in the systems of man or in me." I opened my mouth to ask more, but the light around us began to fade. A force pulled me away, dragging me back toward my body. Jesus held my hand one last time. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them the truth before it's too late." And then, in an instant, the golden light disappeared. I was falling. The music faded, and then I gasped for air. I was back. The harsh glare of hospital lights filled my vision. Nurses and machines surrounded me. I had survived, but I wasn't the same. The moment I saw him, I knew exactly who he was. Jesus stood before me, not as a storybook figure or a painting, but as someone real, more real than anything I had ever known. His face glowed, not with a blinding light, but with a warmth that filled me with peace. And his eyes, they carried the weight of eternity. Yet, when he looked at me, there was only love. A love so deep, it left me completely exposed, yet somehow, completely safe. "Olivia," he said. His voice wasn't just sound, it was something I felt deep inside, flowing through me like a warm breeze. His words didn't just reach my ears, they reached my soul. You are not here by accident. My knees went weak, but I didn't fall. I wasn't even sure I had a body anymore. I just knew I was standing before the Son of God. Lord, is this heaven? I whispered. Jesus gave a gentle smile. Not yet, he said, but you are here for a reason. He stepped closer and extended his hand toward me. I looked down and froze. My hands were glowing, translucent. The M symbol on my left palm pulsed in rhythm with the light radiating from him. Jesus reached out and touched my hand. A wave of warmth and energy rushed through me. Not painful, but powerful, as if every cell in my body had been infused with life itself. The mark on my palm glowed even brighter under his touch. You have carried this mark your whole life, he said. But now, it is time for you to understand its meaning. Tears filled my eyes. What does it mean? Jesus took a small step back, his expression kind yet serious. It is a symbol of spiritual authority and connection, he explained. It identifies those chosen for a divine purpose. But soon, the enemy will create a counterfeit of this mark, one that will deceive many. A chill ran through me. My heart pounded. What do you mean? Jesus' face darkened slightly. What you are about to witness will be difficult, he warned. But remember this, I am always with you. Do not be afraid. Then, he raised his hand, and the light around him shifted. Images appeared in the space between us, moving like a living vision, so real I could almost reach out and touch them. The first thing I saw was a massive crowd. Thousands of people stood in long lines, waiting for something. One by one, they stepped forward and received a small device, a chip or implant, placed into their hands. As soon as it was embedded, the same M symbol appeared on their skin. They believe they are embracing progress, Jesus said, but in reality, they are accepting a chain. I watched in horror as people smiled after receiving the mark. It was introduced as a revolutionary advancement, solving identity theft, financial fraud, and even medical issues. No one was forcing them to take it. They wanted it. A man in a sleek suit stood at a podium, addressing the eager crowd. This mark will keep you safe, he declared. It will make life easier. No more lost IDs, no more stolen credit cards. This is the future of humanity. Jesus' voice remained steady, yet firm. At first, it will seem like a convenience, but in time, it will become control. I saw what happened next. Those who refused to take the mark were shut out. They couldn't shop. Their bank accounts were frozen. Medical care was denied. Even basic necessities like food were out of reach. Guards stood at store entrances, scanning people's hands. First, they will make it optional, Jesus said. Then, they will make it necessary. Finally, they will make it law. A mother approached a scanner with her young daughter. The machine scanned the little girl's hand. Beep. A red light flashed. A guard stepped forward. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't let you in without registration. The woman hesitated. Then she took her daughter's hand and stepped forward. They accepted the mark, not because they were afraid, but because they believed it was progress. Many will be deceived, Jesus said, even those who know Scripture, because the mark won't arrive with horns and fire. It will come with a smile and the promise of peace. I looked down at my hand. A faint, glowing M stared back at me. My fingers trembled. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Jesus' gaze softened. Because you must tell them. You must warn them. The vision shifted. I saw cities, vast, futuristic, and perfectly ordered. Technology connected everything. With just a wave of their hand, people opened doors. paid for goods, and accessed transportation. Everything was seamless. Everything was controlled. Life felt easier, more efficient. But beneath the surface, there was an emptiness, something missing. Then, I saw the other side. The ones who refused to take the mark. They were cast out, forced to live beyond the system. Small, hidden communities, growing their own food, trading what they had. Society treated them like outcasts. But they weren't alone. Jesus was with them. "Those who reject the mark will face hardship," he said, "but I will provide for them. Just as I fed the Israelites in the wilderness, I will feed my people." And I saw it happening. Miracles unfolding before my eyes. Food multiplying. The sick being healed. Children growing strong even with so little. Angels surrounded them, shielding them from harm. Then, the vision shifted. I saw the ones who had accepted the mark. Their faces were hollow, their eyes empty. They weren't just controlled, they were being drained. Jesus' voice was heavy with sorrow. The mark won't just change the body, it will change the soul. It will sever their connection to me. Their hearts will harden, their minds will darken. Then, I saw a man drop to his knees, sobbing. "God, please help me," he cried. But there was silence. The connection was gone. Tears welled up in my eyes. Why would they do this? Jesus looked at me with deep sorrow. "Because they will believe it's the right thing to do," he said. "They will choose convenience over faith, comfort over truth, and once they accept it, there will be no turning back." I saw political leaders standing on grand stages, their voices filled with excitement. "We have achieved peace through unity," one of them declared. The crowd erupted in applause. But then Jesus showed me what they couldn't see. The truth, hidden beneath the celebration. The people in those crowds were empty inside. They no longer prayed. They no longer questioned. They simply obeyed, without hesitation. "The mark won't be forced," Jesus said, "but those who refuse it will suffer." I saw a man standing outside a store, desperation in his eyes. "Please," he begged, holding out his hand. "My children are starving." A security officer shook his head. "No mark, no service." "But it's just a mark," the man cried. "Exactly," the officer replied coldly. I saw leaders assuring the world that the mark had nothing to do with religion. "It's just a tool," they insisted. "It doesn't mean you're denying God." Jesus' expression grew serious. "That is the deception," he said. "This isn't about technology. It's about trust. Will they put their trust in man or in me?" I saw believers caught in the struggle between survival and faith. Some gave in, others stood their ground. Those who refused the mark were hunted down, labeled as rebels, and thrown into prison. Yet even in those dark places, I saw light. "My spirit will never leave them," Jesus assured me. "But the choice will be hard. The time to prepare is now." My heart ached. "What can they do?" I asked. Jesus took my hand gently. "They must strengthen their faith now," he said. "Form communities. Learn to live outside the system. Trust that I will take care of them." I nodded, my hands shaking. "And if they don't?" His expression grew heavy. "Then they will be deceived, and their souls will be in danger." The scene shifted. Suddenly, I was looking down at a massive city. It was stunning. Sleek glass skyscrapers towered into the sky, glowing with bright neon lights. The streets were clean, and people moved in perfect harmony. No crime, no disorder, no suffering. It looked flawless. Too flawless. Jesus stood beside me, his expression calm yet solemn. "This is the future that will mislead many," he said. "People will believe they have achieved peace and prosperity through human progress, but beneath it all, darkness will spread." I watched as people placed their hands on scanners to enter stores, hospitals, and schools. Everything was tied to the mark. Without it, they couldn't get in. A woman approached the entrance of a grocery store, carrying a toddler on her hip. She held out her hand to the scanner. It flashed red. "I'm sorry," the attendant said. "You're not registered. I can't let you in." The woman's face fell, her eyes pleading. "Please, I just need milk for my baby." The attendant's expression remained cold. "No mark, no entry. You know the rules." A cheerful voice rang out from a nearby screen. "Sign up today! It's fast, easy, and will make life so much better." On the screen, a man in a suit smiled as he raised his hand, displaying a glowing mark on his palm. "Be part of the future!" I turned to Jesus, my heart racing. Why would people go along with this? His gaze remained steady. "Because it won't look like oppression," he said. "It will look like progress. It will look like peace. They will present the mark as the solution to the world's biggest problems: poverty, identity theft, disease, even climate change. They will call it the answer, the key to unity." Suddenly, I noticed a group of religious leaders standing behind a podium. One of them raised his hand, revealing a mark. "This isn't evil," he declared. "This is not the mark of the beast. It's a gift from God. With it, we can feed the hungry and heal the sick." A knot formed in my stomach. "But that's not true," I whispered. Jesus nodded. "Even some of my own followers will be deceived," he said. "They expect the mark to come with horns and destruction, but instead, it will arrive with a smile, promising peace, security, and unity." The vision shifted. I saw military officers stationed at checkpoints. People were being scanned at borders, airports, and train stations. Those without the mark were pulled aside. Fear filled their eyes. A young man argued with an officer. I won't take it. You can't make me." The officer remained calm, his face emotionless. "Of course, it's your choice," he said. "But without it, you cannot work, you cannot travel, you cannot buy or sell." The young man's shoulders slumped. Defeat washed over him. Slowly, he stepped forward toward the registration booth. His hands shook as he reached out. The machine beeped. In an instant, his face changed. His eyes became empty. His expression went blank. Without a word, he turned and walked away, like a machine. Jesus' voice echoed in the darkness. "This isn't just about controlling the body. It's about controlling the soul." He took my hand and led me to another scene. A man knelt alone in a dark room, his face twisted with fear and regret. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he clasped his hands together in desperation. "I didn't know," he choked out, his voice breaking. But nothing changed. His hands trembled as he stared at the faint glow beneath his skin. Panicked, he clawed at it, desperate to remove it. But it wouldn't come off. His skin was untouched. The mark was now part of him. Jesus spoke gently, but there was deep sorrow in his voice. Once someone accepts the mark, it affects more than just their body. It changes their soul. The man let out a scream, gripping his head. "Please, God, I didn't mean to—" His voice faltered. His breathing slowed. Then, without warning, he stood up. The tears were gone. His face was calm. He turned and walked away, as if nothing had happened. But his eyes were empty. Jesus turned to me, his gaze heavy with grief. "Do you see? The mark severs their connection to me. It alters their very being. They can no longer sense my presence." Tears stung my eyes. "But why can't they just repent?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jesus' expression was solemn. "Because it changes the heart," he said. "It's not just about the technology, it's about what the mark represents. It is an ultimate act of trust, not in me, but in the systems of this world." Suddenly, another vision unfolded before me. People stood in long lines, not just to receive the mark, but to be upgraded. Sharper vision, enhanced strength, increased intelligence. The mark was being advertised as the next step in human evolution. Jesus' eyes darkened. "They will become less human," he said. "Their connection to my spirit will be severed, not because I turn away from them, but because they will no longer be able to feel me." I shook my head, struggling to comprehend. "Is there any way to stop this?" Jesus' voice softened. "They must choose me before the mark comes." Jesus showed me two different paths. On one side, there were people who had refused the mark. Life was tough for them. They lived simply, growing their own food, raising animals, and trading goods just to get by. Every day was a struggle, but they were free. On the other side, those who had accepted the mark lived in comfort. They had access to medicine, financial stability, and advanced technology. But something was missing. Their eyes were empty. Their souls seemed gone. They moved like hollow shells, like the living dead. "The choice will appear simple," Jesus said. "Survival or suffering, comfort or hardship. But those who choose comfort will pay a much greater price." I saw a woman in one of the free communities. She looked thin, her hands worn from labor, but her eyes were full of light. She knelt with her children, praying. Then, suddenly, a storm rolled in. The wind roared, rain pounded the earth, and just as quickly, it stopped. A ray of sunlight broke through the clouds. The woman smiled. "God is with us." Jesus squeezed my hand. "Those who stay faithful will never be abandoned. I will take care of them, just as I provided manna in the wilderness." I swallowed hard. "But will many choose the right path?" I asked. Jesus' expression darkened. "Few will resist. Most will choose comfort. But those who endure, those who remain faithful, they will see my glory." Jesus showed me small pockets of believers scattered all over the earth. They gathered in homes, barns, and even hidden places like caves. Together they prayed, read scripture, and sang worship songs. Their clothes were simple, their homes modest. Yet, peace filled their hearts. I watched as a young boy handed a piece of bread to an elderly man. The man smiled warmly and said, "Thank you, child. God has provided." With a trembling voice, I turned to Jesus. "But how are they surviving?" Jesus smiled gently. "I am providing for them. I saw fields of crops thriving, despite the lack of irrigation. I saw the sick being healed after faithful prayers. A woman with a broken leg stood up and walked after a group prayed over her. Jesus' voice was calm and steady. My spirit will remain with them. Those who trust in me will never be without. Then I saw a man leading a group in worship. "We may not have much," he said, "but we have faith, and that is enough." Jesus' face grew serious. "They will be hunted, labeled as rebels, enemies of peace. But no harm will come to them, unless I allow it." The scene changed. I watched soldiers storming homes, dragging away those without the mark. Yet some houses remained untouched. It was as if the soldiers couldn't even see them. "They will be hidden in plain sight," Jesus said. "Angels will protect them." Tears welled in my eyes. But what about those who take the mark? Sadness shadowed Jesus' face. "Once they accept it, they will no longer seek me. But until that moment, there is still hope." I collapsed to my knees, sobbing. How can I warn them? Jesus gently took my hand. "Tell them what you have seen." He stood before me, still holding my hand. His face was calm, but behind his eyes, I could see the weight of sorrow. He knew what was coming, and it pained him. "Olivia," he said softly, "the world is being prepared for this. Those who are watching and listening won't be caught off guard, but many will be blind to it." I trembled, my heart aching under the weight of his words. How? How can they not see what's happening? Jesus' expression darkened. Because the enemy is a master of deception. He won't force the mark through fear. He will offer it as hope. Suddenly, visions flashed before me. World leaders standing side by side, smiling as they held hands. Massive crowds cheering as they promised a new era of peace and prosperity. A glowing mark displayed on giant screens. The screen lit up with bold words, "The solution to humanity's problems. Register today and be part of the future." Jesus' grip on my hand tightened. "Many of my people will be deceived," he said. "Even those who know my word will try to justify it. They'll say, it's just technology, not the mark." He shook his head. "But it won't be about technology. It will be about trust." A lump formed in my throat. "Trust in what?" I asked. "Trust in human systems over God," Jesus answered. "That's the real choice. It won't come as a threat. It will come as an invitation, an offer of security, convenience, and progress." I saw churches packed with people. Pastors stood at their pulpits, raising their hands, each marked with the sign. "This isn't a rejection of God," they assured the crowd. "It's just a tool. God wants us to be safe." Tears stung my eyes. "They're lying." Jesus nodded. "Yes, but they believe they're telling the truth. They think they're helping." A new scene unfolded. Christian families gathered around dinner tables arguing. A daughter sat in tears as her parents urged her to accept the mark. "You won't survive without it," her father pleaded. "Don't be foolish." She shook her head. "But it's wrong. God doesn't want this." Her mother, face filled with concern, tried to reason with her. "You're overthinking it. It's not denying Christ. It's just how life is now." Then Jesus' voice cut through the scene. "The choice won't be forced. It will feel like freedom. But true freedom won't be found in the mark." I turned to him, desperate. "How will people know the truth?" His eyes softened. "My sheep know my voice. Those who stay close to me, who pray and seek me daily, will recognize the truth. They'll feel the warning deep in their hearts." I hesitated. But what if they choose wrong? Jesus' face grew solemn. "Once they accept the mark, their hearts will change. They won't hear me anymore. The connection will be broken." I shook my head. "But why?" Jesus' voice was calm and steady. "Because it represents a final choice, choosing to trust the world over me." Suddenly, the light around me began to fade. A strange force tugged at me, pulling me away. Panic surged through my chest. "No!" I cried out. "I'm not ready. There's still so much I need to understand." Jesus gave me a gentle smile. "You've seen enough. Now, you must share it with them." I reached for him desperately. "But what if they don't believe me?" His eyes were firm yet full of kindness. "That is not your burden to bear," he reassured me. "Your task is to speak the truth. The choice is theirs to make." I felt myself being pulled away, faster now. The golden light around him dimmed. The heavenly music softened. The warmth, the peace, all of it began to slip from my grasp. "Jesus!" I cried. "Please don't leave me." He stepped forward one last time and placed his hand on my head. A wave of peace and warmth washed over me. "I am with you always," he said, "even until the end of the age." The light disappeared. The music stopped. Darkness swallowed me whole. Then, pain. I gasped as air rushed into my lungs. My chest burned. Bright lights blurred above me. I heard a voice, urgent and filled with relief. "She's back!" I blinked, my vision slowly coming into focus. I was lying in a hospital bed, wires and tubes connected to me. Nurses and doctors moved urgently around the room. "Olivia!" I turned my head. Sarah stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah." My voice was weak, barely a whisper. I saw him. She rushed to my bedside, gripping my hand tightly. You're awake! Oh my God, you're really awake! A nurse leaned over, adjusting my IV. You were gone for 7 minutes, she said softly. You shouldn't even be alive. But I was, and I knew exactly why. Jesus had sent me back for a reason. My fingers trembled as I looked down at my palm. The M mark was still there, faint but unmistakable. The nurse placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You should rest. But I shook my head. No. I curled my fingers into a fist, my heart pounding with certainty. I have work to do.